So since I made my last videos on Battlefield 2042, a bunch more stuff has come out, especially about the lore. For those who don't know, a couple days ago Battlefield put out a short animated film to go along with the Battlefield 2042 storyline called Exodus. This will probably be the first in a few such short films, as DICE has said that the game will not have a single player campaign, and the storyline will be conveyed through cutscenes, cinematics, and extra game content, similar to what Call of Duty Warzone did with its lore. Exodus was the capstone of a series of lore-based things that DICE has been doing the last couple weeks, called Journey of the NOPATs. Journey of the NOPATs follows a fictional journalist and his blog posts as he enters into the chaotic world of 2042, experiencing climate change, proxy wars, and of course, the NOPATs that form the backdrop for the game. With all this new information, I'm going to update what I said in my last video, see if any of my predictions were right or wrong, and talk about the game's connection with the Battlefield 4 storyline. But quickly, before we go into that, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content, and follow me and ISForNell on Instagram. Also, if you would like to, look at the blog posts and the Exodus film, which I'll have in the description down below. It'll be about 10 minutes for the film, and then maybe another 10 minutes of reading for the blog posts. Blog posts come first. But if you are interested, I think you should read that before you watch this video. So for those who are totally unaware of what's being set up for the storyline in Battlefield 2042, I have a couple of other videos looking at the geopolitical situation and the military tech of the time, so check those out for more details, but here's a quick rundown. The game takes place in the year 2042, obviously, in a world that has been wrecked by climate change, economic instability, and worldwide blackouts. Through all of this instability, billions of people are displaced and they collectively identify as NOPATs, short for non-patrioted people. These people have no governments to help them, and they are effectively left to try and fend for themselves. As tensions start to heat up, NOPATs start to arm themselves and form militaries. Just as relations between Russia and the United States, the world's two main superpowers, are becoming more tense. NOPATs start to fight for the two factions against each other, hoping that alliance with the winner of the conflict will benefit them. The US and Russia, meanwhile, are keen on using the NOPATs, as this would avoid a full-on war between the two powers, which could be catastrophic. We got a more in-depth look at all of this through the Journey of the NOPATs blog page and the subsequent Exodus short film. Not only did we get more details in the world of 2042, we also learned that the game is a sequel to Battlefield 4, so we'll get into the lore of that game as well as see how it fits in with 2042. So let's start at the beginning with Battlefield 4. Also, from my research on the subject, I can't find anything substantive saying that Battlefield 3 and 4 are actually connected. Some say they are, some say they aren't, so for now I'm just going to assume that they're not. Anyway, Battlefield 4 starts in the year 2020, and the campaign follows a squad of US Marines, codenamed Tombstone, who are in the center of a tri-power conflict and the beginning of what could become World War III. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the characters or anything, but the two people you should know are Kimball Graves, nicknamed Irish, and Clayton Bukowski, nicknamed Pack. Through the campaign of Battlefield 4, you play as one of the members of Tombstone, and Pack and Irish accompany you on your journey. The game starts in Baku, Azerbaijan, where Tombstone gets intel from a defecting Russian general who has information about a plot between Russia and Chiang Wei, a Chinese admiral seeking to stage a coup d'etat and come to power in China. We learn that Russia would support Chiang in his rise to power against the established Chinese government. In a novel that takes place before and during the campaign, we learn that Chiang staged an attack by America on the border with North Korea, increasing tensions between the two countries. We also learn that the future leader of China, Jin Jae, was badly wounded in an assassination attempt by Chiang. This comes to the fore during the next mission of the campaign, where Tombstone Squad has to infiltrate into Shanghai to exfiltrate the wounded Jin. Soon after, an EMP device goes off, turning off all electronics in a very large area, including American naval ships in the South China Sea. Tombstone then discovers that the entire American Pacific Command Force has been destroyed by China. Not long after, the squad participates in a raid on Singapore to capture a Chinese airfield where the assault on Pacific Command took place. The squad is captured and separated, however, and Irish is brought to a prison in the Kunlun Mountains. There he is tortured, and the Chinese discover that Jin is still alive and discover where he is, but the squad eventually escapes. Irish and his remaining squad mates then make their way to the city of Tashkar in western China, where they meet American forces and help destroy a dam and Russian anti-aircraft batteries. This is our first sign of tri-national interactions in the game, and a sign that China may be weak, as we see that the US and Russia are fighting each other on Chinese soil. Eventually, Irish and the others are quickly transported to the Suez Canal, where Chinese forces are attacking the USS Valkyrie, where Jin is being held. Irish and Pak unite after it was thought that Pak had died, and eventually the attacking Chinese forces discover that Jin is actually still alive, as they had been told that America had assassinated him. They stop their attack, but the attacking Chinese ship under Chang does not, and Irish and the others go to blow up the ship. The game lets you choose what to do in the end, since the explosives don't work and someone has to go and set it off manually. You can either sacrifice Irish, Hannah, or the USS Valkyrie and Pak along with it. The canon version, however, shows that you sacrifice Hannah and Irish and Pak live on. Then we get into the multiplayer part of the game and DLCs, and while we don't have full details, we know that all three factions end up fighting each other at some point. Russia fights China, presumably anti-Chang forces, in China, while America clashes with both powers across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Central Asia, coastal China, Siberia, and strangely in Paris as well, which may actually be a nod to a Battlefield 3 connection, but I'm not sure. While we don't know the exact order of the conflicts or who won, we can guess that the US probably won the conflict, given that Shanghai is a major city for China, and no fighting was conducted in America. With this information, I think we can guess the reason that China is not a major faction in 2042 is because they lost the War of 2020 in Battlefield 4 and were reduced to a lesser power. It also seems that Russia probably didn't win, but wasn't totally beaten either. Next, let's jump into the future and look at the journey of the NOPADs. Here some holes are filled in for us, and we learn about more developments prior to the game. We learn that the 2030s were a tumultuous time, as climate change and the economy wreaked havoc on different parts of the world, and some countries adapted better than others. In the early 30s, much of the Middle East, including Qatar, became even more wealthy due to an increase in oil prices and scarcity. This came at the perfect time, as many Middle Eastern countries were dealing with desertification, and the influx of money allowed for investment into preserving the countries. At the same time, sea levels rise, causing flooding in Venice, Florida, London, and about a third of the world's commercial ports. This, along with the Second Great Depression, decimates world trade, causing many boats to be scrapped as shipping has declined. By 2038, bread baskets around the world start to fail due to changes in climate and water shortages, and the world's oil reserves begin to run out. In 2039, a treaty is signed to prevent harvesting of resources in Antarctica so as to prevent further ice melt and rising sea levels. Some areas do prosper, however. At Branny Island, Singapore develops an AI-operated port equipped with seawalls and high-level security, becoming the hub of international trade. Fortunately for the US, Singapore was a US ally, helping America tremendously during the global failures. Russia, meanwhile, ignores the Antarctic agreements and develops and builds oil rigs in Antarctica so as to get more oil and gas. Egypt is also able to find some success in this new world, largely with the help of Sinsaco Agritech, a Western corporation that uses renewable energy, GMOs, and state-of-the-art irrigation to reclaim lost farmland and deserted areas. This area is tightly controlled, however, and Sinsaco acts as a despotic power in the area, using force and famine to control uncooperative populations. While Egypt and Singapore are success stories, other areas are not so lucky. Qatar is one such example, whose anti-desertification attempts failed, turning the country into a dust bowl. The capital of Doha is mostly depopulated, with only the less wealthy remaining in the city. After the blackouts of 2040 further ruined the world, another unlikely winner emerged. This time it was South Korea, specifically Daesung Electronics. Instead of relying on satellites, the company develops a technology called K-net, allowing much of the world to get back online while making Songdo the center of the digital world. At the same time, NOPADs begin to develop armed forces for protection, as well as seizure of resources. For a time this is tolerated by the world order, but eventually the NOPAT name is sullied when terrorists begin to claim allegiance and carry out acts of terror in their name. The world powers begin to distance themselves from the NOPATs, and they begin to have to become even more self-sufficient, using more force and covert methods to get what they need. The journey of the NOPATs blog follows Kayvan Bashir, a journalist based in Doha, Qatar. The journey starts on September 12, 2041. Prior to this, Bashir had been looking into armed NOPATs and was contacted by Oz. Oz is the code name of a NOPAT commander who oversees the largest armed NOPAT contingent, making him the most wanted man in the world. Bashir decided to go down the rabbit hole, attracting the attention of the Qatari police and military, who had made the country a police state after the oil ran out. He escaped with the help of Pyotr Gostovsky and made his way to Doha in India, where he met the hacker specialist Navin Rao. There, he watched as the NOPATs commandeered a ship slated to be scrapped, and after a shootout with the Indian military, the NOPATs abscond with their prize, which they name the Copperfield. Over the next few months, the NOPATs run various missions, mostly moving cargo from one NOPAT area to another. In February of 2042, the NOPATs are transporting refugees from Australia and move through Branny Island, hacking their way in and then having to fight their way out with the help of specialist Casper Van Dale. A couple months later, the NOPATs begin to flex their muscle, and when one of their operatives, a Korean named Ji-So Paik, infiltrates Daesung and steals 10 petabytes of information. The NOPAT journey seems to become more offensive as it progresses when the Copperfield makes its way to French Guiana, now a political hotbed. America moved to gain influence in the region after Cape Canaveral went underwater, while Russia supported anti-American sentiment and militias in the region. This NOPAT mission was a part of this, as the Copperfield delivered heavy weapons to anti-American forces in the area. However, the ship is ambushed by American forces, and Bashir is wounded in the crossfire. He survives and discovers that the ship has moved south to Antarctica, where the ship can refuel at the Russian oil rig. However, Russia has recently effected a change in policy, and rather than supplying NOPATs like usual, the Russians now demand that any NOPATs refueling there pledge allegiance to Russia. This ruffles some feathers and leaves many unwilling NOPATs stranded in Antarctica. Fortunately, a US destroyer commandeered by NOPATs comes to the rescue and liberates the stranded NOPATs and Bashir. As it turns out, the ship is captained by Irish. After all of this, Bashir decides to leave the NOPATs when they dock in Sierra Leone to go to work for Sinsaco in Egypt. However, before they dock, the ship changes course suddenly after orders from Oz and sends them to London. This is where the Exodus short film starts in October of 2042. In London, now flooded and abandoned, Irish goes to pick up some piece of intelligence. However, his contact is killed, and Irish briefly gets into a gunfight with the gunman. He wounds his opponent, and after getting the intel, realizes that it's Pack, presumably working for America. Pack is then captured and reprimands Irish for siding with Oz, calling him a terrorist. Irish defends his actions, but quickly eats his words when he discovers what is contained in the intel he recovered for Oz. America has some orbital experimental weapon that is crashing out of the sky in 36 hours' time in Doha, where Bashir's journey started. Irish realizes that Oz wants to use the weapon nefariously, presumably to spark a war between the US and Russia, allowing the NOPATs to rise to power during the chaos. Irish decides to defy Oz, and when Oz's men come to pick up the intel, Irish sails into a Category 5 storm in the Mediterranean to avoid them. This doesn't work, however, as they board the ship. Irish and the other NOPATs kill Oz's men, but not before they get the intel and kill Pack, who decided to help Irish in the end. Irish then puts out a call to all NOPATs and tells them to get ready to fight in Doha so as to prevent World War III. In terms of my predictions from the last Battlefield video, I think this new information mostly confirms what I've said. I predicted that we would see an Indian specialist, which we now have in the form of Navin Rao. The connection with Battlefield 4 doesn't give the exact answer I had for why China was excluded for the main conflict, but I'm sure climate change would still play a role there. We may have gotten a hint as to why Germany fell as well, when in the blog Maria Falk makes the comment that destabilizing places is Russia's specialty. This could either be a reference to modern American political life, or maybe a reference to the fate of Germany. I was also interested to see two other trends which I didn't really predict or touch on in the last video: the fall of more affluent societies and the creep in of corporate rule. As we saw throughout the blog and Exodus, major areas including Florida, Australia, and even London were decimated by climate change and weren't able to adapt in a good way like Singapore was. Further, we see in the cases of Egypt and Korea that corporations are major powers, with Sinsaco having its own army and Daesong effectively controlling the internet by itself. So what does this all mean for Battlefield lore going forward? Well, for starters, I think it's really exciting that this ties into Battlefield 4. On a personal note, I remember when I was 14 or so, and we got Battlefield 4 for my Xbox 360, but I didn't have Xbox Live, so I just played the campaign over and over. When I got older, I eventually got it on the next-gen consoles and was finally able to play multiplayer, and that game is definitely one of my favorites of all time. As for the lore, I think the connection between the two games also helps explain the geopolitical situation very well. The fact that China seems to have been the loser in 2020, just look at how many areas in China were maps in Battlefield 4, explains why they're not in the global power struggle anymore. Further, it seems that Russia probably got out of the war before it was too late, and they in the US made a truce before Russia was totally destroyed. The journalist blogs are a really cool touch in my opinion, and we get a bunch more world building through it than we otherwise may have gotten. Exodus, of course, was amazing animation, and it was great to see Irish and Pack again, although I think it was funny how quickly Irish changed his mind on Oz. It took like 2 seconds, wow. It does seem to set up a chronology in-game as well, as Doha seems to be the first conflict area in the multiplayer chronology. I'm excited to see what DICE does for world building, and if we'll see other Battlefield 4 callbacks or even Battlefield 3 references, further connecting the whole universe. Well, that's it from me, everyone. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Do you think that Battlefield 3 will be connected, or is it already connected in the lore? Do you think more Battlefield characters like Wrecker or Jin or Major Greenland will show up in later cinematics? I plan on making a full timeline on the Battlefield lore once everything is out with 2042, and I want to look more into the tech element once the game comes out as well. Anyways guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.